Hello everyone. Today we have Krithika Nair with us, and I'm extremely excited about the fact. Hello Krithika. It's such a
Hi.
Okay, so I welcome you to PragatiE Vichaar Literature Festival. And Krithika Nair is an assistant editor at Amar Chacha Katha. She writes and edits stories and comics. She is a former student of literature, communication, and psychology. In her spare time, she likes to rewrite the fates of her favorite fictional characters. She also enjoys watching crime drama and exploring new places. That sounds extremely exciting, Krithika. So, would you like to say something about yourself?
Whatever was there to be said, you said it, and quite well as well. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. So, Krithika, the book is coming. I have heard about the book and everything. Would you like to say something about that so the viewers know?
Yeah, so the Spirits of Henasku is the book we're going to talk about. It's a collection of folk tales, actually, not just one folk tale. It's a part of our ongoing series called Legend and Lore, wherein we compile folk tales from all over India, from the remotest corners, from all cultures, and we present it as authentically as possible. So, Spirits of Henasku is one of our editions, wherein the titular story is about about a hidden village in Ladakh.
Wow.
So, it's about the culture there and how they believe that there are certain spirits there called as Balus who protect them, as in protect the citizens of the village and keep them away from all sins and crimes and everything. So, it's a story about that.
It sounds extremely interesting, and I think whoever is listening and all the viewers must be very intrigued towards it because the concept of a hidden village and all the things that are happening is something very unique.
And it's a real location, as in, like, if you are the kind who's been bitten by the travel bug, you can go check it out as well. So it's very real, and it's a culture that we should all be aware of, but it's something so remote in our country that most of us are not aware of it. Most of us are not aware of their culture, their stories, all of it. So it's a good place to explore, and it's a good story to listen to as well.
So, what was the inspiration behind the writing and when you were compiling the stories?
So while compiling the stories, we usually go about thinking what's something that will be able to strike, oh, I didn't know that kind of a chord with the audience. As in, there are folk tales that every region is known for. As in, you know about Raman of Tenali, you know about people from particular places and what stories are famous there. So, what is it that we can put out that's both new and old? Both, it should both inspire you to explore more, as well as make you curious about the kinds of things that you're unaware of, that you consider yourself knowledgeable about, but you're still not able to explore enough.
Yeah, so was the urge of exploring the town also a reason behind writing the book?
No, not really. As in, I have not actually been there.
Been to the place.
Yeah, full disclosure. But there was so we work with a lot of sources, right? Because it's not possible for us alone to authentically represent somebody else's culture. We need to get their inputs. We need to get information from them. We need to verify with them if we are doing the right thing by representing a story a certain way, or should it be a different way. So, in the course of such research, we came across someone. Her name was Antara. She works with Roots Ladakh, and she actually was the person who introduced us to this story. So she gave us the ideas for it. She gave us the information, and we then set out to explore it based on that. As in, we wouldn't, I think, organically have found it out. I mean, maybe perhaps we would have, but it would have taken us some much more detailed research had it not been someone who's right there and helping us out with the research and giving us authentic information and helping us with stepping stones to, correct whatever mistakes we might be making on the way of it. So yeah, that's been our journey with the book. There are other stories as well in it, which one of the other stories is also from Ladakh. It's about a monk, a little boy who becomes a monk, and the other stories are from various parts of India.
So have you ever been to Ladakh, or?
No, not really. It is on my bucket list, but no, not yet.
But it must be so intriguing after writing so much about it. I think so. You have been to the place in your imagination so many times.
Oh yes, totally, totally. There's a there involves a lot of research regarding the landscape, the culture, the costumes, because also the language. Because if you're referring to someone in the dialogues, in the speech, you need to know what the actual culture around it might be. As in, we in say Hindi say bhaiya. So what would they talk to each other as? What would they refer to each other as?
Languages, yeah.
So all of those need to be taken into consideration, and it is a kind of a virtual tour of the place before you begin to write it as well, because you need to represent it properly, you need to describe it to the artist, and you should check out the book. The visuals are stunning, so the sketches and all, they've been as authentic as possible with the
The cover speaks out for it.
yeah, well, the artist has to be credited.
So I think the book is a travel ticket also for people for Ladakh as well. Because if you haven't been to Ladakh, you know where you can go to in through with the help of your imagination. Just read the book.
Yes, it is a great read.
Exactly.
I do
So,
think so.
sorry, did I cut you in?
No.
So I'm very curious. The title of the book, it's not very something that you'll hear everybody saying it. It's something unique. So
Yes.
what is the reason behind it, or where did you come up with it?
I think the crux of the story itself is about the spirits, yes. But then again, you have to think about what makes it unique. The book, the title, what is it about your story that makes someone else pick it up over some other book? And I think spirits, an unknown place, a hidden village, all of these are elements of mystery that will pique your curiosity enough that you want to pick up that book and you want to look at it. The cover itself is curiosity inciting enough, but otherwise the title should lead you right into the, like, you should get the cat into the bag. So
Exactly. So let's move on further. So the topic for our session today is the magic of folklore. So as intriguing as the topic sound and as intriguing as the guest we have today, let's move further. So thank you for being the part of the author marathon, 24-hour author marathon. So let's
thank you
begin
for
with the
having
question.
me.
Yeah, we're extremely excited. So let's begin. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as you know, the folklore is the only source that preserves our culture authentically. Till today, how does folklore awake the roots of artifacts, traditional artifacts?
So if you look at folklore globally,
Yeah,
it's a tradition that humans have had everywhere. It's not like certain scientific discoveries which began somewhere. It was borrowed, it was transferred, it came through, trade routes, nothing like that. So folklore is something that humans have in all cultures come up with themselves, and it speaks about how much it is somewhere a second nature to us. Folklore, storytelling,
yeah,
preservation of, going ahead and keeping this oral tradition on is a second nature to us. So we learn how to preserve and pass on this culture at a time we had nothing that could survive, and we still learned how to do that. And that itself makes it the most authentic source of information we could have, because it has survived times that we cannot imagine of anymore, and those stories have been there since forever, and there is nothing you can do to date them. You can't say this story was from this time. It could have been from a much earlier time, and we probably are not aware of it. It's almost as old as mankind, you could say. and there is very little documentation involved here. And as in, like, the oral tradition is just you pass it on from one generation to the other, to the extent that you will not be aware what generation it started in, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it, the authenticity of it, I would say, somewhere in a in the world that we live in can be questioned, because there are no documents, there is nothing to verify it. But then again, these are not the standards we can hold them to. So it is quite difficult to say verify the cultural authenticity. But then again, these are things that you must accept as the natural truth, that this is the basis of our culture, and this has been going on everywhere in mankind. That different cultures have different folklore, and they have all somehow been preserved in the same manner, and that is something inherently as humans we know how to do. So,
Yeah. So nowadays people are driving towards technology. We all know there's a race towards running technology towards technology. So do you
yes,
think they would still, sorry, should
yes,
I?
yes. No, no,
Okay.
no, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think that they would still prefer folklore tales, because we don't have time these days for anything. We are just running towards going forward, and technology is the key. So do you think people
Yes.
might still prefer it?
I think so, yes. Because, so to be frank, so we still work with a lot of technology at ACK. And as in, we've moved to a digital medium of sorts with the pandemic and everything, because
Absolutely.
it was very difficult to get to print. So, but we have thrived on a digital medium as well, but our content remains unchanged. We are still giving out the same kind of content, the same myths, the same folklore, the same historical fiction, historical non-fiction as well, and all of that kind of survives, even no, because the audience is expecting content of a kind, and the medium somewhere stops mattering to them. So if it's a modern audience, perhaps they would not like a physical book. They like the comfort of having uh, an app which can, be accessible anywhere. But then again, the story they're looking for is still Akbar and Birbal. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
that is, very specifically speaking, it is one of our most searched topics on the app, on our website, that kids, adults, everyone wants Akbar Birbal stories, for example. So it is kind of difficult to say that, oh, with technology, maybe it's not as attractive anymore. But the base fact remains that never have we ever had to, not just us, anywhere, the, we don't change Akbar Birbal stories to adapt to a newer generation, to appeal to a better time. We do not do that, because there is no
Right.
need for it. Everyone accepts it as it is, and that is sort of the essence of timelessness that these folk tales have. That no matter how old they were or what time they belong to, they will still continue to be relevant, no matter how much we develop or become modernized or our tastes change. There is some part of it that will appeal to us, and especially as children's book authors, it appeals more, because children are not, you know they have always had a specific kind of taste in literature. They don't
Yeah.
seek, they're not looking for beautiful words, they're not looking for the depth of thoughts or anything. They are
Even
looking,
simplicity. Yeah.
yes, they're looking for simplicity, they're looking for a good time, they're looking to be entertained, to be educated. And these stories will always fulfill those basic requirements, and therefore they will continue to be relevant to children as folk tales that teach moral lessons, that give you the value of cleverness, of wit, of humor, how to be intelligent, how to be different kinds of values that they will be imparted to by the books. So those requirements, as long as they're fulfilled, I don't think technology is going to be a barrier to folktales at all.
Yeah. Right. So I think technology, as you quoted, I think technology cannot be a barrier towards folklore, because they will either be going simultaneously or they will not be clashing for sure. I believe there will be some way of both. And when we were talking about kids, truly, kids can be molded anywhere, any way out, and they don't have those fancy things that it needs to be on a tablet or anything. It just needs to be simplicity. They can have a good time.
Yes,
So
kids
I really appreciate
like
your
it
thoughts
too.
on that. It is something I really believe in. So, should we move on to the next question?
Sure, sure.
So, how do folklore retelling evolve over a while?
So let's take the example of, say, anything like, say, scriptures, say, history, say, stories, even about yourself. So when we talk about things at different points of time, the same story can be told a different way, and you can be focusing on different things as well. So it is sort
Right.
of the need of the hour, because say you're living in a time where the war is prevalent. So what you need to do through your stories is kind of give the message of unity, of patriotism, of bravery, of courage, of them to, like, keep going. So the message of your story sort of evolves to include this chunk of lifestyle that you're kind of promoting at that point. Maybe
Okay.
with time, once it's a post-war time, uh, the story might evolve to include less of that and maybe more about. So in a post-war zone, let's say for example, uh, more of it is focused on nation building, on healing, on keeping the citizens safe, and those again are a value that we get, a set of values that are very different from the previous one.
Yeah,
So
right.
we mold the same stories and present a different set of values. So, for example, if we take an old story where somewhere it's a popular one, of course. So, historically, we know that at some point Sati and Johar and all these traditions were considered to be very honorable. But then again, we live in in an era where we do not consider that human anymore. We consider that inhuman. We consider self-immolation a crime of sorts against yourself, and that's when we begin to mold the same story in a different light. That,
Different.
yeah. So if for example, there are stories in like ACK books wherein the characters, even freedom fighters for example, they have child marriages. So at that time, we are not going to say, oh, did Mahatma Gandhi have a child marriage, how wrong of him, because that was time relevant and correct for that time. But now, while we write the story, we need to take into consciousness that the reader might not be aware that it's not an okay thing anymore. So we need to add in facts about the truth that this is not legal anymore, it's not something we practice anymore, all of that. So with time, how we tell it will evolve, because at that time it was a normal fact, and with time it became something that you need to give disclaimers with. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
probably how folklores as well evolve, and they adapt themselves to the requirements of the time while their core remains the same. The story remains the same. It's just what they are emphasizing on that keeps changing. And no matter what, they do have a message to give that is going to stay with the people that are being told the story.
So let's move forward. So, if somebody would ask you to define Indian folklore, so from where did you start to tell them that Indian ancient period is quite full of complex stories?
To be honest, like I mentioned before, folklore is something that has been around since the beginning of mankind. Since we learned to speak, we've been telling stories, we've been telling stories that have been passed on to people we will never meet. And we somehow know that we are giving them a gift.
Yeah.
And even if we are not aware of the of the magnitude of it while we are making those stories, we do pass on something valuable to them that goes on for generations and generations. And folklore in general is something I don't think anybody can define properly, because it is something that has transcended all boundaries. As in, it does not care for social class or education, or whether you live in a village or a city. I mean, there's a possibility you might have not heard of a particular, say, historical figure or
Yeah.
an action hero, but everyone knows the story of the thirsty crow, right? Everyone knows the crow
Yeah.
drops the stone when they
Cross.
and that is something, as in, it will be a point where anyone and everyone can get connected. So
It's something
folk,
will pass on.
yes, exactly. And it really has no boundaries as to, you know it has gone across languages, across, state and nation barriers, and it has that kind of a potential that it will survive anything and everything. Now, nobody knows where Thirsty Crow came from, what language it originated
Yeah.
in, who told it first, when did it happen, did it actually happen or not? Nothing. But there
Yeah.
is some kind of a faith in it, because it holds true no matter when you tell it and who you tell it to. And that is the kind of uh, phenomena that folklore is, that you cannot define it with a set of restrictions, that
Exactly.
it is something like this. Okay, we can say it's an ancient thing. It's usually propagated through oral tradition. There is no, we cannot date it, but there are a lot of ambiguous factors, a lot of vagueness around the definition, which is quite not the characteristic of what we call a definition. So, and the beautiful part of oral tradition is that anywhere in the world it can just, it can survive, no
Yeah.
matter how new or old, no matter where it came from. It is probably how humans have communicated since forever.
Yeah.
So there is no way it is going to go away, and there is, it is still evolving, it is still developing. We can't even call it an ancient thing, because it is still very much alive, very much kicking, and
Okay.
still going on and on. And at some point, all of what we're doing will be folklore for some other generation. It,
Absolutely.
it could very well be. So we don't know if we could define this as ancient, or what we call folklore as ancient, or anything. We really cannot put it into the little box that we call a definition or something.
So, do you think, like the folklores of the past and the present, the ones we'll be creating, will have some contradiction to each other?
Perhaps not contradiction, but as all, uh, sto- as in, history repeats itself, there are cycles of things, and I
Yeah.
think somewhere, yes, our values will clash, our
Might.
stories will clash at some point, but those won't be the kind that will make you question the truth of things. It
Yeah.
is a story that you absorb parts of according to what your needs are at the time. So people who will be listening to this, and the ones before us and the ones after us, they are all looking for something out of a story, and they will get it.
Yeah.
So it does not matter what kind of message we are trying to send. It's just that messages are always in a story, and the person who's looking for it will get it out of it.
Yeah.
So
For you.
even if they have clashing values, someone somewhere is looking for that, and they will receive it through the story. So we are doing a good job, I guess. Just being honest with ourselves and writing what uh, we believe is authentic and true is the way to go about it.
And I think by writing it, jotting it down, you are passing on to a lot more generations. It's gonna stay.
Yes, yes. As in, I would say oral traditions are commendable for doing the same without any source.
Process. Right.
Yes, and without any proof material, anything that can survive the test of time physically. as in they cannot be confident that the story I tell you today will survive somewhere
One day
else.
later or not.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do not know it for sure, but I can be sure that if I write it down and I, print it, preserve it, something, someday someone's going to find it and it will reach somebody else. So for them to do that without, fear of it getting lost, and now
Yeah.
that we have the resources to do that, we should be, we are being responsible with it, but we should be more responsible about how much effort we take, because we really have a gift in our hands and we should be careful about how we use it.
Yeah. So let's move on forward to our last question. So learning of folklore starts with family. Then society comes into the picture to explore more about it. How did you get so interested in the magic of folk?
So, frankly, as you said, family, yes, very much. I come from a family of readers, but everyone reads a different kind of book. So,
Yeah.
as a child, I was just going around to different people, listening to whatever they're telling me. Like it's a folk tale, it's a mythological story, it's an article from the newspaper, anything and everything I was listening to. So it sort of became a ritual in the house, and I started getting more and more involved, as in at an age where I couldn't properly read. And everyone in the house also read in different languages, so those are not every, as in like they don't match the
Yeah.
stories, the tales. So my dad would go out, bring me English versions of whatever he's reading, and then we would compare if they're the same, as
It
in
was the
even if
same of
this,
like
yes,
some situation.
even if it's the same story, the details will be different, as in uh, the
There's
books
some
he,
translation
yes,
changes. When you translate it, there's some changes.
yes. And even with folklores, with myths, with epics, there are always versions of it that are maybe more popular in a certain area more than it is in a mainstream zone. So we would compare and talk about it for so long that it sort of became a habit to us. We did that a lot, and that's how I started reading on my own, even without the influence of others. Much later, I am still interested in the same things I would say that I was as a child. Like the tastes haven't changed at all. If it was, it's just the level of reading that has gone up, maybe, but otherwise, it's the contents of it, the stories. I could read the same story uh, 100 times if it's a different version every time. I mean, it is fascinating how many different ways you can tell the same story, and how different they sound, what messages they give, how different the characters seem in each of them. So
Yeah.
and then a lot of these also come into picture when you take your formal education, for example. There are a lot of these, moral stories, folk tales, value education stories, and all of that, and those are also more or less the same stories that you've been listening to in one version or the other at home or somewhere else. So again, you're being shown a different side to it, as in maybe you were casually listening to a story once, and then when it's being taught in class, you're being shown the moral side of it, or the values that you should learn from it, or what the author was trying to tell you. That's something we hear a lot in schools at least. So those exposures are also important, as in at least to me they were, because casually reading a story sometimes does not tell us uh, the entire picture. So you need somebody else to put it into perspective, that look at it this way, and you're like, oh right, I should look at it that way. And I think that was sort of how I got into the habit of looking and relooking into the same stories, and finding a different thing every time is a joy. It's like a treasure hunt. So every time you read the same book and find something new, it's,
You do it.
yes, it is like knowing someone better or something like that. So that is how I feel about folk tales, I guess. It's it's a bond that I've had forever, and I hope it will stay forever.
I'm hoping that so too. And I hope your folklores are being written more so that we can read about it and have being a part and love being a part of that journey as well. Thank you so much, Krithika, for being here. I had an amazing session.
I had an amazing session as well.
Thank you for being part of PragatiE Vichaar Literature Festival and have a great day. Thank you.
All the best, guys.
You're welcome. Same to you. Bye.